Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 1% Better Recruitment podcast with your host, Charles Kiriakou. And as you can tell, this is the first in-person podcast, and it's a very special guest because I'm joined today by Sachin Ruparelia. Right? Oh, I've done it. I'm usually terrible at names. But Sachin is actually the person that got me into the L&D space. He's been a mentor, he's been a friend, and he's just been somebody to look up to in the recruitment industry. We need more people like him. But Sachin, firstly, how are we today, my friend?
Very good. Thank you. Extreme flattery was a good start to the conversation. Right?
It usually helps, yeah. But yeah, for people that may or may not know you, tell us a little bit about you and what you've been doing in recruitment.
Yeah, so we set the business up. I fell into recruitment like a lot of people do in 2005. 20 years next year. Crazy, feeling old. And the focal point was where I just sort of fell into it, having been offered a role in sales. They said, just put the start date back by 6 weeks. And I'd had my notice in the previous business. And they said, go and find a temp job. So I went to Reed Employment and they said, we haven't got any temp jobs, but do you fancy a career in recruitment? And so I didn't look back. Set up... So worked within recruitment for a number of years, and then met my ex-business partner in 2006. I worked with him for about 5 years, and then we came together in 2012, set Camino up. I can tell you a bit about that.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Camino Partners. Obviously, I know you guys because when I was looking to get into L&D, I had quite a few contacts like Rector X, and I can't remember who it was, but they said you need to speak to Sachin from Camino Partners. And obviously I was sales recruitment for forever, so I didn't really know too much about what you guys did, and the companies I worked at were always very small, so we didn't really have operations, marketing or anything like that. And I just never forget the first time I ever reached out to you. We had a phone call. You just gave me so much on that very first phone call, and I looked at your LinkedIn, you're like CEO of the business, and it was like the best recruitment call I've had. And like the empathy you had for the situation I had, the advice that you gave, the value that you offered, I was like, oh my God, I'm in impeccable hands here. And that, throughout the entire process, like not necessarily holding my hand, but like I'd never got into L&D before. I had no idea how to, get myself in and do the interviews properly. And you were just incredible in that respect. But tell us a little bit about, obviously, some people might not know Camino, about the story. Like, I guess let's start off, like, why did you start Camino Partners?
Yeah, this is an interesting, I think it's an interesting anecdote. The year before, I said I worked with Alan McBride, who was my I call him my recruitment dad, make him up in conversation later, but up until 2010. And then I left and joined another business. I was poached by a client to set up a desk there, London office desk for that business. Long story short, I suppose it didn't work out. I was there for a year, and it just wasn't quite right for me. However, it gave me the impetus and the confidence to know what it'd be like working in an autonomous capacity. And then behind every man that does something good, there's an even better lady. And it was my wife that was the catalyst or the encouragement really to set Camino up in 2012. 2011, summer 2011, I remember it was a warm summer's day. We're drinking in a bar called El Camino in King's Cross.
Oh, nice. I've been there many times.
It's myself, and then my current business partner, Matt Newman, and my ex business partner, Alan McBride. And we came together, we were drinking in this bar, so we should do something together. What would it look like? Alan was returning after a year out. Matt had stayed at the business that we worked together in, and then I'd moved to this other company. So for 3 years, for a year, we'd been apart effectively. We said, look, let's do something really niche, and it was kind of inch wide, mile deep. And I'm sure this will come up as we speak further. But for me, the philosophy of having a really tight micro niche is so powerful. And I'll come on to your very kind compliments in a minute, but we said, let's do really niche. And initially it was purely accounting and finance roles into recruitment companies.
Okay.
That was it. Just accounting and finance into recruitment. And they'd cut the background had come, and I won't go on for ages on this, but Alan had been an FD within a recruitment company, and he had been FD and an MD. And so he had built up a network within that space. When I joined him in 2005, I just sort of piggybacked off a lot of the work that he was doing, and really sort of building myself a network within the recruitment space. So it was an industry that it was pretty familiar to us, and in some guys we've been servicing probably 40-50% of the work at that company that was with Alan with. Alan at. We're servicing the recruitment sector. So we said, let's just sort of inch wide, mile deep niche. And we did, 2012. We set up January 2012, and the first year was very much accounting and finance, just about getting our kind of foundation set. And then 2013, we effectively extended the level of or the breadth of the roles that we cover. So today we cover L&D, as you know, marketing, ops, HR, compliance, anything non-fee earning specifically for recruitment companies. Nobody does what we do to the level that we do it. I'm really proud of that. It's quite when we've grown a business on that, and the secondary business that we perhaps talk about later has come as a result of the work we put into building that original business, the original division. So those are the foundations of what we end up doing. You gave me a really nice compliment, which is great, and a lot of who I am in terms of my behaviours and the way I speak, or articulate myself, has come from Alan McBride. So I owe a lot to him, and I think just doing the right thing. It's quite an obvious statement, but just doing right by people, do what you say you're going to do, very simple things, and just following basic sort of recruitment sort of etiquette when you talk to people, and so. With conversations with you, I tried to do what I do with all the candidates and clients, and build relationships up with people where you're doing good by them, and then ultimately it will pay itself back in dividends. Several years on, I'm on a podcast now, so I'm very blessed that was positive interaction. And let's be honest, you give me the compliments, but you were an exceptional candidate to place. So I got very excited at the prospect of working with you, and we placed you fairly quickly. So I was really pleased about that.
My wife and I were joking about this when I said that I was having you on the podcast, and she was like, "Oh, that'll be a really, really good one." And I said to her, I just remember when you had me out to some of these interviews, and I didn't have a CV. I just had my LinkedIn profile, and you were like, "Look, you've got a really solid LinkedIn profile, but like, it'd be great if we could get a CV put together, get your figures on there. And have you done anything like any coaching?" I was like, "I had a life coaching business for a bit, and I've trained Thai boxing. I've coached kids Thai boxing for like several years." And you were like, "That's not on your LinkedIn profile." It's like, is that relevant? You hold classes, you train people, you've coached kids, and that's not on your CV, you nutter. I was like, oh yeah, to be fair, like I just had no idea. Like if you put me in front of a company to interview for a sales role or a manager role, I just knew I'd get the job. But for L&D, and I think it's quite an interesting thing really, isn't it? Like, you can do it because you don't have the experience yet. That voice inside of your head is like, I don't know, that's like a bit of an imposter syndrome, isn't it?
Always. I have imposter syndrome presently. We'll talk about that. I think one of the big things as well is around our values, and that was took us a long time to define those. The reason I bring them up is because you talked about my kind of knowledge and understanding of the market we operate with. And I don't understand. You get unfortunately some of our peers in the market that we know that are just sadly give the industry a bad rep, but. As I said, it's easy to do the easy thing, like do right by people, be straight, and then for me, learning the market really well. So one of our values, our first value, is powered by knowledge, and it is just really getting on top of your market, understand your vertical market intimately well, understand the market you recruit within, understand the sector that you're serving as well, and I think that's really, really, really powerful. I know you're going to ask me later around the 1%, but this is just something that I think every business, to thrive, you need to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, who you're doing it for. Yeah.
Well, you recommended Brad come on the podcast, your non-executive, your chairman, who I've met and recorded with. And one of his topics of conversation was that you can build a business on compassion and kindness, which, when he said that, and I know his role within Camino, I was like, wow, that's actually... I get that now, because obviously having my experience with you, and to be fair, a lady called Heidi who got me the job at Projectus, you and Heidi really shifted my perception on recruitment. And as you know, I've worked for some businesses that made me think twice about staying in recruitment. And everyone knows, anyone that listens to the podcast knows how passionate about this industry I am, and my whole business is helping and coaching people to get 1% better every day. But I know so many people, so many friends, and people that are still in the industry that question their own sanity, and they look around at their peers and their manager and the founders of their business, and they're like, why the hell am I in this industry? I guess you talk me through that. I mean, you talked a little bit about your first value, but your non-exec, your chairman says about building a business on kindness and compassion. Like, talk to me a little bit about that.
It's a really good segue into, I suppose, the why.
Yeah.
And if I'm in a crowded, noisy place, I always say I've got two whys, and people mishear it in that crowded, noisy place. They think I say I've got two wives, which I clearly don't. Don't think Mrs. Ruparelia would be very happy with that. But I have two whys. So my first why is my family, family first always. I sort of raised a bit of a smile when I saw your message to me the other day when I had that news, some sad news, and you said, look, family first always, and that's my line, family first, full stop, always, full stop.
Always.
And I try and abide by that I abide by that with regards to those people in our business, and, any family oriented, we encourage people to take time for their loved ones and support wherever we can. The second why is positively impacting every individual that I interact with. And it's just it's something that it's only interestingly been formed in my mind and succinctly, articulately be able to say that in the last year or so. It took me a little bit of time to, I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do, but this is a backdrop to everything I do. And I always have that at the back of my mind when I'm in a social situation, work situation, whatever it might be. And so I try and live by that internally. From a business standpoint, and that then translates across to what the business why is, the vision for the business is. Effectively, we want to build a business that's good enough to attract external investment within 4 years. And there's no secret to that. We've been very open. We've got launched an EMI scheme literally the last week or two for everyone to participate in the business. But I say, and I kind of call that my North Star, I keep referring to it as, and I say, I want to achieve that, but with my caveat is with the backdrop of kindness, compassion, and respect, using two of the words you just used then. And Brad, for sure, rubbed off on me with regards to the inputs, and the way I look at things. So, for me, that I'd rather be, I can't remember what the phrase is, but I'd rather be a, poor guy and, have the right values and know I can go to sleep at night, having done the right thing by people and be good to people. I'm also a devout Hindu, and I think that, strong believer in karma. So that if you do good for people, it will find its way back to you. I don't do it for that reason, but I just know that, and it normally does find a way of paying dividends. So I pride myself very much on being good to people. You're not always going to come across how you want to, and you misconceived sentiment about what you do and what you say, and it's not always landing well. Sometimes I talk a fair bit, as you know, and so sometimes there is a risk that I say too much or things come across the wrong way, but people know ultimately it's coming from a good place and with a clean heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if that answers your...
Yeah, no, it does. And I have a question I wanted to ask you in a second. But what you just said at the end kind of reminds me of what Nitin, who is the host of the Rec Talk and he owns Rec Tools, said at the Recruitment Agency Expo. Although it was quite skewed and people didn't understand what he said, it was quite funny. But his quote was, "You can be the sweetest peach on the tree, but not everyone likes peaches." And it took a little bit of a while for me to realise that, and might be the same as you, that you speak to candidates and clients or people in the network, friends and things like that, and you think, I do right by people will like that, I mean well, I've got strong values, I've got good ethics, morals, but some people don't give a fuck. Some people will just look at you and go, "You're just annoying, mate." They just don't like the way that you look, and that's fine.
Yeah, and Alan used to have this great phrase, you can't please all the people all the time, and it's true. I think if you, and again, I try and I've got lots of people in my network. I kind of view as mentors, and I try and take as much. And particularly this last sort of 10, 12 years of my life, I started developing when I realised I knew nothing, and so I take a lot from people when it comes to kind of just developing myself and hearing, if there's a better way of doing things, I'm always open to that. So, I learned a lot from Alan, learned from Brad, and then there's a guy called Logan Naidu who runs a phenomenal business. Try and get him on this podcast.
Nice.
So just incredible chap that's been a real big influence on the way I operate. But just doing right by people. And it's so easy, I think, to be reasonably good at what you do in this sector, because it's not a complex business that within the recruitment sector or complex sector. I know there's nuances and intricacies, but it's not doing the right thing by people is not difficult.
Yeah.
And if you do that, that can set you apart, sadly, because there's so many peers of ours that don't necessarily treat their people so well. Their people internally, externally. You hear these horror stories about how people are treated and ghosting. And if you Google, if you haven't done this before, Google recruiters are, and you've seen the little meme or whatever it is that flashes up. People put on posts, and it's we are the second rung up from estate agents in some people's eyes, which I don't think estate agents are bad, but it's sad to be perceived that we're as being at the bottom of the industry in some markets or some people's eyes.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so passionate about what I do, because I talk about it a lot, about how we can shift the perception of the recruitment industry, and I think one of the ways of shifting the perception is having businesses that have a real solid foundation when it comes to values, when it comes to their vision, when it comes to their morals, ethics, and also, and it's around the onboarding, the training and things, right? Well, my first proper job in recruitment, and I've mentioned this on the podcast so many times, they gave me a book with 2,000 contacts, every private hospital in the country, and said, just call through them and get some jobs. And I was like, right, okay. It's just me and this one guy. We've got no job. It's a brand new market. I'm like 3, 4, 5 months into my recruitment career. So I'm just seeing all the cowboys in the office do these techniques, and it kind of rubs off on you. And then you see other people in the office and like all the carry on that comes with recruitment, and you kind of embody that. And it wasn't until I joined Projectus, and they were very, very strong on ethics and stuff. And I remember Tim's wife, Rebecca, who was part-time because she was raising kids, but she was like the ops and L&D director. And I remember the first time I listened back to a phone call, and there was a few things, and she said to me, in this industry you ask if they've got some time to speak, but where I came from, contract nursing, you never do that because it's bang 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 super fast. And I said about some cowboy recruitment techniques that I used to use. We used to call up other agencies, pretend to be a nurse, put on an accent and get all the leads. And she was like, we do not do that here. Like that's cowboy. And I was like, wow, okay.
Shocking.
And they grew a business fairly well, and COVID happened, and they're all right now. They've got an office in Austin. But that was going to be my question to you, because I see some people on LinkedIn talk about, you talk a lot about relationships and stuff, but actually most businesses in recruitment that are doing the best are transactional. They're really hardcore. It isn't about being kind. It's about the money and all that type of carry on. Just curious to get your opinion on that.
Yeah, I think if I got that correctly, I think there are businesses that will make some money doing it that way. But I think you're building a house on foundations of straw. I don't think you can you get found out. Depending on how wide, even if your market's fairly wide, I think short term you can have some success operating in a transactional way. And I promise we're not going to go through all my values unless you insist we do. But one of our values is, and incidentally, our second value. So first one is it's an acronym, Pride, but Power by Knowledge, and the second one is Relationships First. And so again, we pride ourselves on that. And that's internally, externally. I think the businesses that really do thrive, they have a purpose, they have an understanding of who they are, who they want to service, what their kind of USPs are, which markets they want to go after, and they do it in a concerted manner. Of course, you get people that aren't ethically aligned to you and I that will flourish and do well and independently make some money and whatever else. But if you're not good by people aren't idiots. They cotton on, they'll catch on, and you'll get found out. If you have a poor experience with somebody that will, and nowadays in the world of reviews and FIFO and Google reviews and stuff like that, it's business's worst nightmare. It's quite harsh. Keyboard warriors are just going, but you have to also then treat people well. There's also a rise in things like the NPS scoring, where you automated. I think that's a way of driving service and quality, versus just being sales focused. But yeah, I think that there are businesses that will thrive, but I think it's short termist. You think there's people that want the businesses that will be happy with that kind of transactional approach. Again, that's not going to be sustainable. They're probably not going to grow themselves with that kind of, in my humble opinion, and therefore, that relationship will end up being transactional. They'll have no loyalty to this partner potentially if someone else comes in and undercuts the price, or can offer something better, quicker, different jurisdictionally. They'll move, right? So that's, for me, it's building deep-rooted relationships with people. We talked about not pleasing all the people all the time, but as long as you can go home at night or go to sleep at night just knowing that you've done right by people, and you've done everything that you can the right way. You know, we've walked away from fees in the past. We've had, honestly, over a drink at some point, but some of the anecdotes that we might have discussed in the past as well, but behaviorally, we've just pulled away from anything that, even if it's the cost of losing fees, we'll pull away because we know it's the right thing for the client.
Yeah.
We've pulled offers and things like that in the past.
Wow.
Told a client that we learned something. Maybe everyone would do that, I'd like to think, but I'm sure they wouldn't.
Yeah. Fair. So you've been running your business for 12 years now, right? So as you know, as we're recording now, it's like my 1 year anniversary of running my own thing and everything like that. I've learned so much. We went on the walk to the studio today. I was telling you about like the highs and lows I've had, and I was quite interested to know further about some of the highs and lows that you've had of running the business and essentially being like the number one in what you do, and everything that you do as the CEO of the business and everything. But what would you say, we'll start off with like we'll start with the lows first, actually. Like, what would you say are like a couple of the biggest lessons or a couple of big lows that you've had in like the 10, 12 years that you've run Camino Partners?
First of all, congratulations on the 1 year. Very good. I didn't realise it's time's flown so quick. So much, you talk about blood, sweat and tears, and there's so many things that I don't like to live with regret. I'm going to talk about my journey, mental health journey later on, but I think it's just learning from what we've done and maybe doing it differently, and supporting people that are going on a similar journey, albeit in the future, and you can then give them some steer. But some of the things I think on a very macro level, I'd say people and processes. I think just making sure the sort of systems and structure that you put in place should be, if you have the end in sight. I think if you rewind and say, if you understand who you are, where you want to go. I've said that a couple of times already. I think that's really important. Before you do anything, understand what the focal point is and where you want to get to. Because I don't think we kind of did that, and we're very, very kind of modest views of what we wanted to achieve. And we're very fortunate that even not looking back at that business plan, within a couple of years, we'd achieved it, which was kind of cool. But yeah, having visibility of what you want to do, how you want to get there, because we probably didn't do as much of that. We didn't relate back to the business plan. In an ideal world, having visibility of where you want to get to, and then putting bite-sized chunks into kind of milestones to hit to get to that next iteration of what you want to achieve, I think is really important. And we didn't do that. We do it a lot better now. We have a plan. We know where we want to get to, what we want to be, what we'll look like then. And I don't think we did enough of that. We weren't ever cowboy recruiters. We didn't have structure. So the training would be learning through doing, and it wouldn't certainly be giving someone a book to say ring, because we'd be worried about our brand. So it'd be around seeing what other people do. Our L&D was very much just Harry, who's my business partner, and we got Matt and Harry we brought in. He's a wonderful rookie to MD story, and he now is based in Tampa, in our Tampa office, done very well. And the second part of our division, our business, was set up by him. But he learnt through osmosis, which I think is really powerful. I don't think much can be said for, I wouldn't take anything away with regards to that development. However, creating an infrastructure for people to flourish in. One of the biggest mistakes I think we made was not giving enough visibility to people around what good looked like. So I kind of midway through the journey, I think maybe 5-6 years ago, I kind of made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to fail anybody anymore, as much as I could control. So people were given extremely clear visibility in what they've got to do. If they join the business, here's what's expected of you, here's what good looks like. And we didn't do that. And, we'd make decisions, and probably sometimes the wrong one, not giving people the right infrastructure to flourish, or the support or the training, or whatever it might have been, to flourish. And then they don't succeed. And it's, is that because of us or because of them? So I think the big thing was just giving people clarity, visibility, and what they need to do to get into a good place in our business, what good look like, benchmarks, what good look like within across the business in terms of behaviours. And that's another thing, actually. And activity levels, and how you operate, what our expectations are. Behaviourally, for sure, there's something that we could have done differently with are, it's a real common debate in the sector around, I don't know what good sort of use of phrase would be, but big biller syndrome, where you get people and behaviours are sometimes wrongly, in my opinion, accepted. Poor behaviours are accepted from high billing consultants. You would have seen it in your recruitment career, and now I'm sure. Egos that come alongside success and lack of humility. And that's another thing I really just, I think it just costs nothing to be humble, and just being. And so you get people that are just ego driven. They make decisions for the wrong reasons, and so behaviourally, I think we probably could have made some decisions on people sooner, knowing who we are. Our value system is here, and I'm a, for my sins, a big Man U fan, and I sort of take a lot from Alex Ferguson, the way he operates, and he was a bit of an idol. But no one person, no one man is bigger than the team. What he's the old boot story, but he's so from my standpoint, again, adopting that philosophy of having standards internally, what good looks like when it comes to behaviours below the line, above the line behaviours, and actually having non-negotiables. I think we didn't set early on, and as a result, people would push the barriers, and sometimes there'd be behaviours in the business that we were never, as I said, Wild West, something like that, but behaviours that we have very high. I'm very kind of morally focused, and I pride myself on my values, as I said earlier. But I haven't always, sort of made strong decisions when it comes to people not exhibiting values that are conducive to the way that I operate.
Yeah.
And that's something else I would have changed for sure. The structure, systems, behaviours, not tolerating, poor behaviours from people, I think is really important.
Yeah, 100%.
There's enough of loads. I can go on for all episode for loads the wrong phrase for me, but learning
definitely
areas I could learn, lessons to learn, and areas like things I could have done differently.
Yeah,
I would help someone do differently now.
Yeah, and I think it's always healthy for anyone to kind of look back at things and see what you could change or do better, or perhaps what you just simply learn from. Like there could be things that you've done that have absolutely smashed it, and you go, what did I learn from that? How did that work, etc. But a few things that you mentioned there that so what I've been doing with clients in the last, I'd say 2 to 3 months, has been not pivoting away from like desk coaching and stuff like that, but it's been a little bit more high level with working with the founders who are early on in the business. And a couple of my clients have said we're moving away from being bedroom recruiters. So they don't want to just do that. They want to scale, they want to grow, they want to get a bigger office and all the rest of it. And a couple of the things that I've been saying to people echoes exactly what you've said, is almost over communicating where the business is at, where the business is going to go, the new processes that you're putting in place, making sure, bear in mind, years ago, if old me heard me talking like I am now, I'd be like, really? Because I was like the least process driven person. But I've been saying to people, document absolutely everything. Make sure you have a clearly defined company-wide process, but it's not overly rigid. Because if you have a rigid process, like I've worked in businesses where it's like, this is how you do things. Okay, cool. That will mean that I'll be at 50%. If I do it this way, I'll be at 90%. No, this is the way we do it. I'm not a big fan of that. You have a company-wide process, but if you are better at email marketing or you're better at cold calling, then you triple down on that, but as long as you're in line with how we do things within our values, etc. And then another thing that a lot of businesses don't have is that clearly defined progression scheme within a business. And I'm working with a client at the minute to actually formalize and document how to go from trainee to MD, how to go from, if they want to set up a delivery side, how do we make that attractive? What is the progression cycle? But not just hit 2 quarters and you become a senior consultant. You need to make sure that you're behaviorally aligned to what the business wants and that you're abiding by values. And I've said this on the podcast a couple of times, but I got promoted to senior in record time at Projectus. For a couple of reasons. Firstly, I think it was like 6 or 9 months after I'd started working there, I sold the biggest ever retainer. I think it was like 250 grand in 2017, biggest account in the company history. And I farmed out stuff to the European team. Didn't take any commission from it. I said, take it because this is for the business. And for Tim, who's the owner of the business, that for him, he was trying to spot future leaders. That's a leadership mindset. That's someone that's a senior person within the business. That's someone that is inviting clients to the office all the time, coming in at 7 a.m. to interview, to host interviews for his clients. That's someone that people can look up to. Did I hit 2 quarters in a row? No. But I smashed my Q1 target. I got best newcomer of the year before that. But I didn't hit 2 quarters, but behaviourally and future-wise, everything was there, hence why he promoted me so quickly. So yeah, I think everything you said is exactly the type of thing that I'm doing with clients at the minute, mate.
And we've spent a long time, incidentally, just sort of timing wise, just rolling out a brand new promotion pathway because of how we've had them in the past. But as I said, importance for me to make sure that people have visibility. The purpose for this was having visibility of, where you're at now, what you've got to do to get to the next level, what our next level looks like. What the associated remuneration and bonus and benefits looks like, and then the pathways. So you've got visible pathways, whether it's billing, non-billing, interim, perm, Camino Partners, Camino Search, which is another brand that we can talk about if you wish. So and that just giving visibility to people of what they've got to do to get from rookie or trainee, associate, right through to if leadership if you want it, or super biller if you want to get to that point. We have partner level person now, that partner level part sort of route that one can get to from a billing standpoint, and that encourages people to not only think that the way forward is via leadership. So we have a leadership route and we have a billing route, and there's kind of clear sort of structure around what you've got to do to get to each level, and there's about 7 or 8 different stages that you've got to go through from that journey. It's quite powerful, and it gives that visibility, understanding what's my next step. Well, here's a promotion pathway, exactly what you need to do, and it's just clear, it's scientific. Of course there's a bit of flexibility that can be offered, but we've done this big project that's taken 4 or 5 months and hours of leadership time, but we know how critically important it is to make sure people have visibility, and Harry was a big catalyst on making sure that we had this reevaluating what we had and putting this new pathway in place. Yeah,
nice. Well, before we pivot slightly to, because we talked a little bit there about like lessons learned and stuff like that, and I know that both of us, mental health is a massive issue, right? I just want to end on that because I haven't actually asked you about like the biggest high that you've had, like the biggest win that you've had. Like you must have had like a story that you can tell us in the last 12 years that has just been mega. Like what's been the biggest success or high or whatever you would phrase it?
I think there's we're blessed. There's been a few, right? And I think for me it was being able to open up the pride. There's 2 things. So one, I would say, tremendous pride that I have in seeing people around me flourish, and I think that's really important. And flourish, seeing. Harry's a great sort of person to talk about because he's gone from that rookie to MD, and there's been lots of others. Stories like that in our business. We're just seeing people progress and seeing people, not just in the business, sort of professionally flourish, but then also them, buying their first property and watching them and giving them a mortgage advisor to do that, or getting their name. And it's just, for me, that fills me with tremendous pride each time I see one of my colleagues able to get into that position. As a business, there are lots of wins. We've talked about the lows, we talked about for all evening and all afternoon. And again, the wins, there's been a number of really amazing wins. I think the couple of biggest ones we've recorded, and this is, I take no credibility for this, or very little credibility for this, but our Camino Search division that we set up in Harry's brainchild this was, but set up in Jan 2020, but properly Jan 2021, excuse me, has recorded 12 consecutive quarters of net fee income growth, which is brilliant. Again, I said, it's Harry and his team that have been driving that charge, and that's been amazing to see despite the softening macro climate. A lot of people have had a really tough time over the last couple of years, and don't get me wrong, the Camino Partners brand has suffered because supporting the recruitment sector hasn't been as rewarding because the businesses are making cuts. They have been making cuts this last couple of years. Things are turning up, which again, conversation for another time, but the Camino Search division places finance and accounting, corporate development, M&A professionals, both interim and perm, into the tech and tech-enabled space. So often PE firms and their portfolio companies that we service, and we've been small enough, nimble enough to thrive, and I think picking the market. So that was Harry, has been brilliant. So me celebrating that success with the team. You know, the accountability's there and the investment and support of Harry backing him to do something like this. But, you know, the team have done it all, and they're just, you know, incredible bunch of people. They're so passionate about the industry, and what we've achieved there, I think, is really cool. And then, you know, culminated as part of that journey, in Camino Search, opening up. We opened our first international office up in Tampa in March of this year. So, you know, I went to visit in September for the first time, seeing the office, and just remember walking in and that just sense of pride that you know, you've got that feel of the startup mode. We've got 5 people, soon to be, next week 6, in that office now. We're sending 3 over from here, and we'll have 3 locals that are, have joined us. But the sense of pride that, you know, forget all the, you know, all the other stuff that comes with it, but just doing these cool things. And again, a lesson from Alan was around, you know, do all the good stuff, work hard, thrive, build a business, you know, that's successful with the right value system, and the byproduct will be professional growth and success, and, you know, financial success should come as a byproduct of it. You know, don't focus on that because your motivations will change. But if you focus on doing the right thing and you're hitting your North Star, then I think as a byproduct you could do quite well on the way. So yeah, look, that journey's been amazing. Our headcount has grown significantly as a result as well. So you know, we're 4 times the size we were since January 2021. So really pleased at that headcount growth and the net fee income growth that's come alongside it. Lots of challenges and pains along the way, but very proud of that.
That's amazing, mate. Well, you mentioned there about the challenges and the pains. I know that you have recently gone on like a health transformation, not just a random like health kick, like I've done a 30-day green, like you've actually completely, like you showed me the pictures. It's insane. Like it's absolutely insane. And I can't remember when it was that you mentioned it to me. And you said, I'm sure you'll understand, but you know, I've got a therapy session. And I was like, oh, I had no idea that you'd been to therapy. And I said a few times on the podcast that I did a few sessions with a therapist, and I didn't like the way they said it because they were like, you should do 12 sessions. I was like, but I got everything I need out of, like, because it was a specific issue. And as soon as I fixed the issue and I had the tools and techniques, I was like, I'm good. Like every time I went after that, it was kind of like, how do I explain it? I just went there and she would just sit there silently, and it was like, don't really have much to talk about. Life is great at the minute. And then it's just like, right, okay, how are you feeling? And I'm just like, right, I just feel like I'm just chatting about, and you're bringing things up. Like I'm good. And I hadn't needed to go back. But running a massive business, I see a lot more recruitment CEOs and just business founders in general openly talk about getting into therapy because of just how much is going on in your head, right? So I guess just talk us through like what made you go into therapy, like what, you know, was there a specific instance that happened? Like just talk us through that.
Yeah, you said before we started, there's a no holds barred, mindful. Yeah, I'm not sure what reach we'll have and who'll watch this, but I think I'm an open book generally. So you know, I had a pretty dark childhood, and it was quite a violent childhood, not directly towards me, but my mother, and you know, so my father wasn't very pleasant to her, and that was kind of the root of it. And I'm just happy to share that and be open and honest. And that's kind of what the root cause, I think, of some of the challenges I've faced in later life. So yeah, that was sort of what caused it. And yeah, there was that, and I kind of grew up in a world where that's all I knew, and I was fortunate that, you know, nothing was ever directed physically towards me, but it was quite painful seeing it.
Seeing it in front of you and stuff.
And that was from age, you know, kind of, well, ever since my first memory, right, was probably violence, and then right through to I was about 17 or 18. It was the last sort of bout, and there's a story there for another time if you want, but yeah, and I think that sort of led me to behave in ways that again, my language use is consciously I use my language consciously because of what I've learnt in therapy, and I'll come on to that in a second. But the big thing is for me, I had behaved in a way that didn't work for me, in short.
Okay.
Right, and that would then isolate me from people. I wasn't building healthy relationships with people. I can talk a lot, and I didn't necessarily channel that in the best possible way. I didn't know when to stop. I was quite that's the best way to describe it. I don't think I came across to people how I wanted to. I was probably a bit misread. I was very keen to be liked, and that's gone throughout my life as a very common theme around just the desire to be liked, and that stuck with me through probably ages 4 to 24. The violence element. I just remember my mum saying I was probably labelled as a naughty kid. Which, that's the worst thing ever. Don't call your kids naughty because they're not. They might be behaving poorly or not.
Yeah.
Something that works with you. But I was labelled as a naughty kid, and what happens if you label a kid naughty?
They're probably naughty, right?
Yeah, and so I that was pretty tough, and as a result, I didn't have many friends growing up, and then I think probably something hit. The early 20s. I was always reasonably kind of just aware. So I began to realise that if something didn't change in terms of my behaviours, I was going to be a lonely person going forward. And so I started sort of slowly broaching, rather than broaching the root cause, but just adapting my behaviours to what I thought was the best way forward. And I was very fortunate that a massive part of my happiness, and I talked about my why, was meeting my wife, now wife. So Dee has been, she's. I met her when I was 25, so 24, sorry. And we have had, she was a major influence on my behaviours. And of course, there was a transition period and learning about each other and whatever else. But as our relationship flourished, again, my behaviours improved in my mind in terms of how I operated. And that was all kind of just on my own. I did all of that. And having seen the violence growing up, I kind of vowed that I'd never, ever behave in the way that he had behaved, my father behaved. And just sort of segue, I mean, segue sort of sidebar for them. He behaved this way because his father was violent, and there was and I imagine his father before him was violent, and so on and so forth. And I think I'm proud of the fact that I was able to break the cycle, because for me, having seen how my mum, I was very, very close to my mum, and it's probably the difference, to be honest with you, very, very close to my mum, and so I'd never want to impose that kind of pain. Yeah. Physical, mental, to anybody. And so we set Camino up when I was 29, 30, got married. Dee and I got married similar the year before we set Camino up, 2011. We got married, and then I kind of there were still aspects of my behaviour which I was probably not very self-aware at that point, because I was probably quite polarizing in terms of my views, people's views on me, and I probably wouldn't. My behaviours were conducive to wanting to be liked rather than being respected, and that's such a common, conversation in business, around, do you want to be liked or respected? We know the answer to that. As long as you're kind and compassionate, respect all the way, right? And some people will like you, and some people won't. But as long as people respect you, I think that's really important. So the big the catalyst for me was Brad Plax, who's our chairman. We started working during COVID, and he spent a long time seeing kind of my behaviours from the outside, I suppose, and just saying, well, look, there's something here. I told him about the story, my background, and it took me about 6 months of him gently suggesting, shall we say, encouraging me to get some therapy, and I ended up doing something called psychodynamic counselling, which effectively it's based on the behaviours that you exhibit today are a culmination of your childhood and how you behaved, as who you are today is affected by who you were when you were a kid. And so it's kind of, there's a lot of work that's put into your childhood, and I'm talking about your childhood and the good, the bad, the ugly of it. I suppose in one line, therapy for me helps people to understand why they behave the way they behave.
Yeah.
In one line, that's it. And I'll give you the whole story in the backdrop, but taking one thing away, that's what therapy does. And so for me, it just helped me to really understand how I behave and why I'm behaving a certain way, how I'm feeling a certain way. There's sort of language use around attacking behaviours. So a lot of people attack themselves, in terms of the language use. I'm terrible, I'm bad, I'm this, I'm that. Again, you're not. These are people aren't intrinsically bad.
Yeah.
They behave poorly sometimes. It doesn't sit well with us. And children aren't bad. Yeah. They behave poorly sometimes, not the way you'd like. So that was a big shift for me. The therapy was when I did it, and I did it for 2 years. It was absolutely game changing for me. Got to sort of the weeks like you described where, I kind of didn't know what to say. And the therapist used to think that was probably because I was hiding stuff I didn't want to,
Really?
not consciously, but subconsciously hiding stuff I didn't want to talk about or whatever else. But the highs and lows I used to experience in my life, and when I feel down and whatever else, so, the therapy helped me to understand, kind of how, it helped me to understand who I want to be and understand my relationships with people, why I get angry, why people get angry with their kids or with their colleagues and whatever else. So the combination of all of that, I imagine, follow-up question might be, as I'm preempting this, but, well, sort of today, what's it helped me with, and what how is that translated to my behaviors today? And I'd say in one line, I'm a better husband, I'm a better father, I'm a better son, I am a better leader. In my opinion, you have to ask my colleagues about that. But and so, to anyone listening, I think if there's any question mark around behaviours, and you want to understand if you've had stuff happen in your life and you want to find a better way, just talk to someone, because it's absolutely been game changing for me. So how it's been because I have learnt to listen better. I think that's a major thing. When it talks a lot, it's not natural to listen well.
Yeah.
And so I've learnt to listen. I've learnt to become more self-aware, learnt to have more confidence in my decision-making, and knowing that the things I'm saying are being said for the right reason. And, people, regardless of how they feel about that, if you're doing the right thing for the business, then there's no question marks. Yeah. Getting angry with my kids, I don't get angry, or very rarely get angry with my children now. I get frustrated and disappointed, and I share that with them, and I explain. I try not to raise my voice. So that's been it's a paradigm shift in my behaviour. So I used to shout and scream, and never laid hands on them, but it was shouting and screaming and whatever else. But gradually I've learned to work on that and become a lot more measured just in my life. Just a lot calmer. Just you've probably seen a bit of change in me since we've known each other. Sorry, I've gone on a bit of monologue there,
no, it was great, mate. No, it's great. It's good to hear. To be honest with you, I want to say in the last 2-3 weeks or so, I've actually really reconsidered going and getting therapy again. Not for any particular reason, and I'll tell you the reason why I did it before, because I'd done counselling and whatnot before. But I'm a strong believer that if you're married or you've got a partner, it's great to talk to them, but equally you can kind of not ruin the relationship. That's a complete wrong way to say it, but you can burden someone with the stuff that you've got in your mind. And I've had a tough childhood as well. I've gone through some stuff, and there are certain things in my behaviour that I need to work on and whatnot. But I've said this to my wife when she's been going through difficulties at work, and I'll have a full day. And, the other day I did 9 back-to-back coaching sessions. I came home, my brain was fried. And the first thing is like, my manager's blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, sometimes it's difficult because we need to be able to speak. But when there are real, deep-rooted issues, when I saw a therapist, Rosie even said, and my mum even said, there was a massive shift in you. It's like there was this weight off my shoulders. And I'm sure you all agree. I don't know, because I've got friends that are Hindu, but I know that their backgrounds were similar to mine. I was raised in a Mediterranean household, and it was very much, you hold it all in. You can't express these emotions because it's shame on the family and all that type of stuff. I don't know if that's similar to your upbringing at all.
Father, yes, the same. Very little emotion, and you never knew where you stood unless you'd had a drink. I didn't mention that actually was drink involved in that.
Not surprised.
So the violence and whatever else. So, but my mum, she's one of my best friends now. Just my kind of emotion and my ability to empathise, and I think that that stemmed from learning from her, and she's very emotive and showed me a tremendous amount of love for I say 2 people, but more all the love in the world I was shown by her, and so that positively influenced me despite the backdrop of everything else I was dealing with. That was a real major influence. So actually openness and kind of also having a really what one might perceive to be a modern approach to just, I suppose, life, acceptance of the Western culture. My mum was very open-minded about everything, and kind of whether and just she always taught me that it doesn't matter what caste, color, creed, sexuality if someone exhibits or is or has, that they you treat them as you would treat anybody.
Yeah, nice.
And you don't look at anything like that, socioeconomic status, whatever it might be. And I'm really blessed that I had that from my mum, because it's really helped me to never really avoid judging people. So yeah, from a modern perspective, yeah, absolutely. From there weren't things that, in terms of showing emotion and that kind of thing, it wasn't looked down upon by my father, but he just wasn't very emotive.
Yeah.
My mum, however, was, and I think that's helped massively throughout my life. One thing I will say, I've been fortunate enough to have that as one of my superpowers, just emotional intelligence and respect and understanding of people, whoever they are.
Well, it sounds like it's had a tremendous impact on your life and with business. And like I said, I've been thinking about redoing it again because, I've been told by people, first year of running your business by yourself, it gets lonely, to be honest with you. Like, I might be naive in saying this, but because I'm going in on site with different clients, I'm getting that social interaction. I speak to my friends often. I've got wife, dog, family. Like, I'm good in that respect, but it's doing everything. And like I said, the finances, the marketing, the branding, the business development, the training, the everything, and trying to be a good husband and, baby on the way, all that type of stuff. It's a lot. And the difficulty with the therapy that I did before, it was trauma therapy focused. And my mum had been saying this for years, that you need to see a counsellor. But I saw a counsellor when I was in secondary school, because I don't know if you know this, I was basically a young carer when I was like 14 years old or something like that, maybe 15, 16. My mum's a cancer survivor. She had a mastectomy, but she's probably got the worst luck in the world. Every single surgery she's had has always gone wrong. She had the mastectomy, then it got infected, so then they had to redo it. So she had the implant, they had to take it out, and they had to do it multiple times. I've been in hospital, and I've seen nurses around. I'm like, can I go and say hello to my mum? I was like, I don't know if she's going to make it. Like, literally just telling me, and I'm like a teenager. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm there and I'm seeing my mum, and they're like, say your goodbyes to her and all that type of stuff.
Wow.
So having to go through that as like an adolescent, whilst you're trying to do your GCSEs, whilst you're trying to do your A-levels, whilst your dad has left home, and then your grandparents get ill, and then the grandparents die, and then all of that type of stuff is like a lot. My mum always used to say, oh, you need to see a counsellor. The problem I had with counselling was that I saw a counsellor in school, and I remember I stood up and I screamed at the counsellor because I was so frustrated. I didn't have any outlet, and all they were doing was, go on. And I was like, just tell me, like, why is this happening? Like, they're like, that's not my job. I can't tell you what's happening. All I'm here to do is just to listen to you. And as a teenage boy going through that change with all the testosterone coming in, I needed like a male role model to grab my arm. And thankfully my godfather, he's the one that introduced me to martial arts, which massively changed my life. But that's why I was opposed to doing counselling. Now, the therapy that I did was trauma focused. So the things I learned from that was like what your trauma response is to certain things. And a light bulb moment that happened in one of the sessions was one day I was driving on the way to work. Some guy cut me in front, crashed into him very slightly. He got out. I hadn't had a coffee. I hadn't had food. I was half asleep. And it was this big scary dude, and he was pointing his finger, calling me all the names underneath the sun. And it's not that I froze. I was just looking at him like, is this actually happening? She was trying to identify like what my trauma response to that, because some people will just cower away. Some people will whatever. And I was like, well, yeah. And I said, well, I did have a slight smile on my face. And she was like, that's interesting. And I was like, I do tend to like try and see like the funny side of things, whether that's healthy or not. But we dug deep into it, and I realize now that whenever something in life gets hard, the first thing I do is I turn my PlayStation on. And the thing that popped up in the therapy session, I went, that's why, because I didn't understand why. My wife would always be like, you get distant and you just go upstairs and turn your PlayStation on. And I remember the first time, like the first traumatic sort of incident happened was when my dad sat down with my brother and I and said, basically he had an affair, and he was trying to tell us like, it wasn't really an affair, it's just we fell out of love. And I was playing FIFA with my brother. My brother was younger than me, and he was just yapping. And then all of a sudden I had blanked it out, and you know in the movies like that, and he's just doing all this lip service, and I'm just playing video games. And then he walked out the room, and obviously in my teenage mind I'm like, oh well, if I just do this, I can just I can dissociate.
Yeah, I think and I'm sorry to hear about that. It's just tragic, I know some of it, but it's very sad, and a testament to who you are to have come along on the journey and be where you are today, right? I think I wouldn't let any of that put you off with regards to therapy, I think it's finding the right person. I was very fortunate when I found my therapist, and I think there's others that have struggled with their people, and you just find someone different and have the conversations until you do, right? It's emotionally it's tough, right?
It's hard.
And I'm sort of a little bit split on how to react to the sentiment around your the school counsellor, because they don't. My therapist wouldn't tell me anything. She asked. I think the brilliant technique. That's like recruiters, right? Asking brilliant questions. I think that's one of the biggest strengths one can have.
Yeah.
I know someone's going to be good if they ask good questions generally.
Yeah.
They won't. I know as a kid you needed that role model, but it wasn't. I don't think you would get that from your counsellor.
No.
I think from the therapy perspective, I would, if you're thinking about it, like do it. You know, just find someone that's you can resonate with you.
Do you do yours in person as well, by the way?
Yeah. She insists on it. She's go nuts if I have to.
I did it on Zoom. I did have a breakthrough on Zoom, and then Rosie walked into the room and was like, "Where's the hairdryer?" And I just turned around and I was like, "Go now!" I was like, tears running down my eyes. And luckily, the therapist turned around and she was like super like professional, like typical, like corporate type of personality, and she went, the fucking timing on that, and she never swore. She was very like, oh, like this. When she said that, I was like, all right, I respect you now. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I think. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, no, you. I think it's important to, just because you've had one bad experience or a couple of bad experiences of therapy.
I will say the therapy that I did do, I can't necessarily say I had a bad experience. It was really good. The only bad side of it was that in my last job, it was the first time in my life I've had to budget, so I didn't really have a lot of money. I wasn't earning commission anymore, and it's expensive, right? It was like, I think it was like £90 an hour or whatever, and I was like trying to do my budget, and I was like, this is a lot. And once I had my breakthrough, and I was like, oh, I've learned a lot from this. I was like, cool, I feel like I'm good for the minute. And the response from them was, no, you need to do the 12 weeks. I was like, well, I haven't signed a bloody contract. And they were like, you need to. It's part of therapy. I was like, you've really, I don't like that. No. I don't like that at all. That's what put me off. But the actual experience of the lady, I left her a 5-star review. She was phenomenal.
Yeah. No, it's big. I think it's you are going to get people who that's the bit you remember, interestingly. And I think there is something to be said around finishing the therapy, because I had that. I spoke to my therapist a few times around finishing, and she was in demand. There's a waiting list, things like that. So her reasoning, I can't comment on your situation, but her reasoning was, you've got to go through the journey, finish the journey, and at that point, then you're kind of ready. And I wanted to finish it prematurely for a number of reasons. I thought I was there and fine. She said, well, you're not, these are reasons why. And she's educated me to that. But yeah, honestly, I think if there's any question around feeling that you need help, it is a cliche, but it's so true. It's okay to not be okay. I think I pride myself on looking after our team. So I've done things for people in our business around those that are struggling. We have a cash plan that allows people to have therapy or counselling of sorts, and then separately, privately, I've supported people confidentially, individuals as well, if they've had tough times. So for me, I know how much value is added for me, so I'm just an absolutely massive advocate of it, and doing it for the right reasons. You've got to go in wholehearted. Don't do it. You don't do it thinking, well, I'm not going to do well at this, because anything, you're right. You go in and anything, you put yourself mind. If you put your mind to something and you have pre-connotations how it's going to end up, then it's not going to end up well, right?
Yeah.
You've got to go with an open mind. And honestly, I almost preachy about it. I just think it's so important to look after your mental health, because healthy. I think people talk about healthy body, healthy mind, but I think to flourish, you've got healthy body and healthy mind. That's a superpower.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I feel like I'm now, and I think a lot of people listening will understand my mindset right now, where I can't necessarily say I'm struggling. I'm doing well. My head is firmly above water. I'm doing well, and I feel mentally, physically pretty all right. And I think that's kind of almost like the best time to do it. I feel like the best time to go on a health kick is not necessarily when your body's fucked or whatever. When I got into therapy, it's because I told you about the story of my dad. I hadn't spoken to him for like 5-6 years, and I knew I was going to get married to Rosie. And I haven't told you this story about when Rosie and I went to Amsterdam, have I? I'll tell you. I'll give you the long story short. But we went to Brussels, Bruges, and then we took the train to Amsterdam. We did a couple of nights in Amsterdam, and 25 years old, you're obviously going to do psychedelics out there. So we had a trip. She's like, having the greatest time in the bathroom, looking at herself in the mirror, making funny faces. And I heard a voice in my head saying, you haven't talked about your dad. Bear in mind, I haven't spoken to him for 5 years at this point, since I was like 20. And I just remember looking around, and I'd been reading some Terence McKenna stuff, and he talks about if you do mushrooms, sometimes they will talk to you. I was like, this is nonsense. This isn't real. And then it was just like, sit back. And I was like, huh? And then all of a sudden, like this force, and I would say I'm quite a spiritual person. I was like, this is maybe like a higher power trying to tell me I'm suppressing something. And my body went like that. And I just heard a voice say, close your eyes, shut up and watch. And I went like that. And I just saw a fucking reel of my life. But when I was born to as an adult, all experiences with my dad. My hairs go up thinking about it now. It was the most genuine, it was the most like powerful experience I've ever had in my life. And when it happened and I saw like my dad change my nappy, I saw my dad take me to go play football, and Rosie came in and she's like, oh my God. And I was just crying my eyes out. And I didn't tell her at the time that I knew from day one I was going to marry her. And from that experience, the end thing that made me cry was that you're going to get married and your dad's not going to be at your wedding. Your dad's not going to be there when you buy your first house. Your dad's not going to be there when you have... And it fucking broke me, man. It really, really did. It was so emotional. So I messaged him to try and reach out. Long story short, he never did. And then one day his now ex-wife messages me saying, by the way, your dad's dying. Out of the blue. Whilst I'm at work. So I call her and I'm like, what's going on? She was just like, yeah, I'm leaving your dad. I'm going to Australia, but he's like in a really bad way and he could go at any point. So I call my brother up and I'm just like, we need to go and see him. My brother is way more harsh than me. He's like, he's a complete dosser. I'm not spending time with the guy. He's going to die. Like, as his sons, we have to do that. And he was like, what has he done for us? Like, he's been the shittest fucking dad. I was like, well, for my sanity, my conscience, I want to reach out. So I went to go and reach out to him, and then I was just like, oh my God, I was just so distanced with Rosie. I was just at work, I was a different person. So I reached out to the trauma therapy lady, went through therapy. She guided me through what the first session or first meeting with my dad was going to be like, and like mentally preparing myself, giving me some strategies to cope and everything. And after the first time meeting him, I reported back to the therapist, and they shouldn't really say what it is, but she said, have you ever considered that your dad has some specific personality traits? And then I was like, what? And then she just pulled out this book, and then she was just like, she read out these different personality traits. I was like, yeah, that's my dad. And then she turned the book around and it said narcissistic personality disorder. Wow. And I was like, and then she was like, if you've got a family member, especially a parent who's a narcissist, they will not change, and everything will be about them, and everything you've described about your childhood, him taking you to football, everything you said was because he was the coach. He used to flirt with the other mums. He tried to impress everyone because it was nothing to do with you. And my whole childhood just went boom, like just light bulb moment. And the next time I saw him, I gave him the invite to come to the wedding, and he was like, I'll think about it. And then he was like, can I invite a friend? And I was like, no. And he was like, I don't think I can make it. And that's the last time I saw him.
Wow. Gosh, what a story. What a story to nearly end our conversation. But yeah, it's gosh, so we could have another hour talking about that. But sorry to hear, but what an incredible story, right? That's going to be the highlight of this conversation for sure. But really, really interesting. And I'd love to ask some more questions at some point. But yeah, it's... I think, again, testament to the fact that actually you were given visibility of how to react to a situation from the therapy. And I think, you're brave enough to reach out and kind of get some coping mechanisms and understand how to react. So that's really powerful stuff. And I think, just one thing that kind of resonates particularly is, like, again, it's on the learning for me is, right, well, you can dictate how you behave, but you can't dictate how others. That's one thing. So, if you'll go about doing the right thing for the right reasons, and, it lands poorly, or someone, doesn't want to, your sadness about your dad being not being there, whatever, and you did your bit to bring him there. You did everything that you could have done, to have allowed him to be there, and he chose not to. So that's a him thing, not you, right? I think the big thing is not necessarily, and this is kind of, I talk to my wife quite a lot about this, but not changing your behaviors. I don't want to sound like I'm preachy here, but trying not to change your behaviors despite other people's adverse reactions. Behave with consistently, and just because someone's behaving poorly towards you, don't let it diminish your character, your personality, who you are, by going to their level and behaving poorly with them. I think that's just really, really powerful. So I just, it's something that I really resonates with me, and I think, in terms of behaviorally, just not changing who you are for anybody else.
I love that, mate. That's a phenomenal quote, and that's it's a good note to kind of gently finish off, really. And I will say one thing before I ask the final question, but you know, when I do these podcasts and hear people with stories like yourself, and you know, I know sometimes as a podcast host you shouldn't really make it about yourself and stuff, but typically I will try and share some stories because and I'll make sure that they're aligned to someone like yourself, because I think that's what in society and in recruitment is missing a lot, is that empathy piece. And I'm a huge believer that, you know, if someone opens up, like you talked about your dad, I've got one of my best friends, he's got an alcoholic dad who used to beat his mum up and stuff like that, and he told me some really, really graphic stuff. You know, and we talk about my family and stuff, and that empathy and understanding is so huge to me. And just wanted to say thank you for sharing that, mate. I really appreciate it. And the last thing I was saying, I forgot, everything that you've been through, and likewise with myself and the guy that I had on earlier, it makes us who we are. I know that's cliche, but also those difficult things and difficult people have shown us who not to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. Absolutely. And I think your story was amazing. I think it's absolutely, I don't want it to all be about me. I think just conversation and learning about other people and their journey. I think that's what I said to you earlier, didn't I? Just really, I know what I know already, so shut up and listen. You might learn something, right? So yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Well, as you know, the last question I ask is, following today's episode, how do people get 1% better in recruitment?
I toyed with so many different things I could have said, but I boiled it down to just one very, very simple line. And I think that's just having people that are better than you around you. You know, I think people have egos and they think they can do everything, you know, but actually realizing what your strengths are, bringing people in that have some of the development areas that you have, and just, you know, letting people... kind of like, you know, just being open to learning with regards to people's reactions. You know, I think there's always good people out there that, there's always people out there that will have kind of views of they know everything, and those won't grow. And I think just having people better than you at certain things and not having any ego or arrogance to not bring them into your world. Yeah, I'm doing reasonably well because I've got amazing people around me. Simple as that.
Love it. That's good advice for me because I'm solo, so I need to get some other people around me. Love it, mate. Well, again, thank you very much.
Thanks, Charles.
For my first face-to-face guest. I couldn't imagine anyone better.
Thank you. That's really kind.
Love it.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate.